Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Bobby Spiegel. I'm the President and CEO for the Corona Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our weekly call. For those that are live with us today, you'll be able to ask your questions and be able to interact with the different presenters. For those that are listening to this recording later, every Wednesday we have a call. It's called the Corona Chamber Business Briefing. We give you an update, like an overview of what's going on in Sacramento and local issues from time to time. Things are very time sensitive, so at times we ask that you go, and do some action like reaching out to our elected officials, which will give you slides and information on who to contact. Other times it will be letter writing, and then there's sometimes just reports, just updates. But while you're busy taking care of your business, the Corona Chamber is focused on our advocacy and how we can help your business succeed, your business in general. And so it's often said that if you are not at the table, you're probably on the menu, and there isn't a bill or a tax that Sacramento doesn't enjoy passing, and they don't understand how to do business and all the headaches that you go through. But we're fortunate to have a chair of this organization for the advocacy outreach this year. His name is Jeff Miller. Many of you know that name because he is a retired state assembly member. He served our area and served the entire state of California in the assembly, and he was able to talk common sense to his colleagues, teaching them what it takes to do business and how come it's not a popular thing to continually increase with fees and taxes. Jeff, prior to being on the assembly, he was our city council member in Corona, as well as our mayor. All that time, though, he also ran a small business. He is an insurance broker and has a very successful insurance practice here. We're very fortunate that he serves on my board of directors here at the Corona Chamber, and he's offered to run this organization of the advocacy outreach as a volunteer. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jeff Miller.
Thank you, Bobby. As always, you make me blush. So I appreciate that. Thank you for the very, very kind introduction. Today's meeting is sponsored by Awards and Specialties. They are an award and recognition store that sells your basic sport trophies to complete custom awards for any occasion. This includes medals, ribbons, lapel pins, corporate plaques, lapel pins, and more. I said that twice. They also specialize in custom framing, matting. Thank you, Awards and Specialty, for sponsoring the meeting. And you'll see a little chat button on the bottom. If you have any questions, feel free to send those into the chamber host. And with that, I always got to ask the chair of the board if she wants to make any comments.
Thank you, Jeff. So appreciate you and what you do for our chamber. I just wanted to say, as you know, we've been talking about the job fair for a couple of weeks, and we had it on Saturday at the shops at Dos Lagos. And I just want to give a huge thank you to all of you, the Job Fair Committee, made up of local companies and chamber board members, but particularly the organizations, you're on this call as well, that came out and supported us and helped create jobs and build a stronger community. The gods listened. I pray very rarely, but one of the things I was praying for was please let people turn up, because as you know, job fairs recently in the last 2 years have been getting very, very little attendance. So getting like 10 or 12 people at our job fairs before has been a huge success. So I believe there are over 100 people came. I think it was much, much higher, but probably at least 150. We're collating the final numbers. But the organizations I spoke to, all of them, they seemed very happy with the turnout and the people they were getting to meet, because you get to see people face to face, right? It's very different. You can sound different on the phone, and then you turn up and you're like, oh, SHIT. So it was very successful. The chamber staff did a great job. and getting all the organizations set up, and the gods listened to us, and the weather was overcast till about 11 a.m. So that was perfect. So anyway, we hope to repeat these in the future. We are collating any of your comments or feedback so that we can do a good debrief and make improvements. So we'll be reaching out to you if you had a booth. If you didn't, but you were there, or you have any comments, please reach out to me or any of the chamber staff, and appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Paul Bender. Thank you, Paul Bender. Speaking of jobs, it's always nice to be able to promote folks that are on the call that are hiring. And I guess I'm speaking for Peppermint Ridge. Jim, you're still hiring, right?
Yes, indeed, we are. We were very appreciative of the job fair. It was well worth our efforts, but we do have many openings available.
Okay, great. Well, as always, I like to recognize our nonprofits that are on the call that so important to the fabric of our community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony, the keeper of the best bumper music available.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And I definitely do try to keep you all entertained right before the briefing starts. So there are just a few announcements that I would like to go over today. And the first is our Coffee with an Entrepreneur program. As you know, as of last week, our Coffee with an Entrepreneur program did change to a Thursday. So it is going to be next Thursday, August 4th. We will have Dr. Marina Miller joining us to share her story as an entrepreneur. The program officially kicks off at 8 o'clock here at the Chamber of Commerce. So register now and come hear how this U.S. Army veteran founded M Health and Beauty here in Corona. I will be posting the links in the chat to every event that I mention. So the next event is the Mega Mixer that is coming up on August 18th. This will be at the Temecula campus of Mount San Jacinto College. This is going to be a huge networking opportunity in collaboration with many of the local chambers of commerce. Admission is just one business card or $1. Exhibitor spaces are available, so please see the link that I'm going to put in the chat to learn more. And the last thing I want to mention is our Good Morning Corona event coming up on August 19th. It will kick off at Eagle Glen Golf Club at 6:30 in the morning. This is going to be a very well-attended event as we are honoring our police and fire departments of Corona. So make sure to register now. We are expecting spaces to fill up very quickly. So register now, and you also get the early bird pricing when you register for a little bit longer. We also have sponsorships and exhibitor tables available, so check out the link to learn more. So with that, as I mentioned, I will be putting the links in the chat, and back to you, Jeff.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anthony. We've got a really great program today for you. It's gonna be very informative and kind of put things in perspective from the variety of news sources out there that are impacting our local business community. With that, I'd like to introduce Jeff Gibson. Jeff owns Occidental Communications Group. For 35 years, he has specialized in areas of political consulting, government affairs, and government relations. He has spent time in many areas pertaining to the environment, housing, transportation, and was the author of Jessica's Law back in 2006. So Jeff, are you queued up, ready to go? Or do I need to stall a little bit? All right, well, we'll come.
Here I am.
Hey, I thought we lost you.
Looks like me.
All
How
right,
are you?
it's all yours.
So
Take it over,
we
please.
start with very sophisticated questions here. Like, why is California so lucky to pay $5.49 for gas when the Biden administration is saying that the national average is $3.99? And so in looking at it, the last 2 weeks, we've been discussing how California has and continues to be the largest domestic user of Russian oil, and is now the largest domestic buyer of coal energy. And what that really means to the climate change goals, because each of us are paying fees of up to 89 cents, a good portion of which on each gallon of gas, a portion of which are supposed to go towards fighting climate change, when in reality, up to 1/3 at any given time of the electrons in the electric grid in California come from coal. So we went and did some deeper digging. The two charts to your right on this first slide are from Bloomberg via the Energy Information Agency of the national government. And what it shows is that 100% of the energy that we purchase from Russia goes to the 6 refineries, essentially 6 or 7 refineries that service most of 80% of that capacity goes to California. A very small sliver of it goes to Hawaii, and a very small sliver of it goes to Washington and Oregon. Hawaii has a population roughly equivalent to Riverside County. To give you an idea of what you're looking at there, they have very mild winters, so you're not, and there aren't many places to drive, so you aren't using a per capita, you're not using a lot of oil there. So just to give you an idea, each refinery is different than another refinery. The underlining piece of this is when you're putting gas in your tank, invariably it is from Russia. So no matter how you hear the news play out, no matter who you think we could be seeking energy from, whether it's New Jersey or Pennsylvania or the Permian Basin in Texas and Oklahoma, or the Dakotas, all of which are major producers, Ohio, of oil domestically, and we'll get into that in a second, of the environmental impacts of that production. It is coming almost exclusively from Russia. And if not Russia, then Nigeria, and if not Nigeria, either Venezuela before we had a trade embargo with them, or Saudi Arabia. So if you are angry that Saudi Arabia is sponsoring a professional golf event, then just understand that because of state policy, we get a large amount of energy from Saudi Arabia. So, and why is that? It's because the California environmental codes can be enforced on domestically produced items. They cannot be as effectively enforced on internationally produced items. And because that's an issue of national trade policy. So oil falls into that. And in 2019, one of the first acts that Governor Newsom had in office was to sign a bill essentially eliminating the ability of California to use domestically produced oil in for its energy needs, either for gasoline, either the summer blend or the winter blend. If you know anything about California, you understand, you already know that there are 2 different types of gasoline we have depending upon the season, which is why May and October are especially brutal for us at the pump, because those are the last months before they switch from a winter blend to a summer blend, and then from a summer blend to a winter blend. So this is what we're trying to get to here, is exactly why we're paying $5.49 at the pump, and does that match up with what our stated goals are? Because each of us on this phone call are paying a large amount per employee on those stated goals. economically speaking, there's two big events that are going to be coming up, one today and one tomorrow. Today, the Federal Reserve will be announcing a likely 0.75% increase in the main interest rates banks charge themselves. It could be as high as a point. There's very little feeling that it's going to be less than 0.75 point, so that would make it one of the largest increases since the early 1980s. And then as a percentage, one of the largest increases in human history, because our interest rates had previously been so low. So that'll be an exciting experiment to see what it does to the GDP number, which comes out the next day. So by this time Thursday morning, we will know whether or not the country is in recession according to all available economic standards for recession. So hold on to your hats. There's a lot of exciting things ahead. Now, one of the things we looked at for climate change goals, because we in California are taxing ourselves, and that's what a climate change fee is, all the fees that we're paying to achieve a lower, what's known as carbon intensity. That means that for each unit of productivity that we have, whether it's us breathing or us in the economic workplace or any of that, how much carbon is being used. And we're looking to lower the intensity of the carbon that we're used. So oftentimes we talk about oil from Canada or oil from Mexico or oil or energy even from China. There's a small amount of oil that we buy from China in the California mix. And what does that look like in terms of carbon intensity? Anthony, why don't you go to the next slide real quick? And what you see, and these are countries ranked by carbon emissions. So you have to your far left, what you have are the 2021 percentage of carbon emissions in the world. And in China, that's 20.7%. So they're the largest polluter by far of any emission or anything in the ocean or any of that. The second is the percentage of corrected GDP. There was a small correction. Well, there wasn't a small correction. China's GDP has been self-corrected by 1/3 down over the last 3 years because they underreported their housing development sector as only being 8%, and in reality it was 30%. So they were essentially hiding a gap of about 20% in their numbers. I know it's strange to be misled by a government, but you know it happens from time to time. And the large yellow band that you see to the right of each of these statistics is the carbon intensity. So what we did was we divided the percentage of GDP by the percentage of carbon used to carbon emitted to produce that GDP. And what you can see is that China is almost 2.5 times what the United States is. So if you're buying anything made in China and climate change is important to you, if you were buying anything in China, it took 2.5 times the amount of carbon to produce that item than if it were made in the United States. That does not count transport. That does not count marketing. That does not count anything. So, and remember, it is an official position of the state of California that they are trying to eliminate things like domestically produced cement from California, so that we would have to be buying our cement from China. That is an actual state policy under the same executive orders that Governor Newsom provided as his first act. And we have been dealing with that in the state legislature ever since. We still are producing cement domestically in California, but as you can see, the second grouping there on this chart is the United States, and it's the orange economic figure is larger than the rest of these countries combined. The emissions are smaller. than the rest of the countries combined. So we are much more efficient in our emissions of any, let me underline that. We are much more efficient as a nation in every way than the entire world combined. And we are more productive. And you can see that our number here is 71. We have a carbon intensity number of 71. So, and then you go, okay, well then our policymakers have created a policy in which we buy a huge amount of our oil from Russia, and then we bring it here, and then we try and strip out as much of the carbon as physically possible and all of the emissions. But what is that doing in the production of that energy? Well, let's go over here. You can see that on the same scale with Russia, you can see that there's a large red band of about, it has about 60% of our emissions, the level of emissions that the United States has. So you say, okay, well, they have fewer carbon emissions. Then you look at their economic productivity and you find out that they have 1/10 our economic activity, which gives them a carbon intensity of roughly 5 times the United States. So for every drop of oil that is produced in Russia and sits in Russia, even before it gets on a boat to come the thousands of miles here, it already has the carbon intensity equivalent of 5 drops of oil produced in anywhere in the United States. So we are giving up a huge amount of any sort of carbon gain that we have by trading in any significant way with Russia or China. And then you look to further down to the right, and I'm not saying trading with China is bad. Obviously, I think as a nation, we have decided that trading with Russia is bad, and obviously there are risks with trading with the two. I'm not getting into trade policy. I'm getting into climate change policy, because I guarantee you your tax rate in the state of California is based on the figures that we're giving you. So as carbon emissions continue to rise in this country, and as your taxes continue to rise in this state, and you are still paying the rate you're paying at the pump, we expect that you will have some frustration, as we do from time to time. Everyone here wants to have a cleaner environment and does not want to have climate change, whether it's caused by humans or whatever it's caused by. We want to leave the world better than we found it. Here's a reason why that is not happening in any further than we would hope, other than the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which we live in, is cleaner than it has been at any time since the founding of the agency. So locally, we are very, very successful in cleaning up the environment. California has taken on as a policy a position to do its best to save the world. We are being thwarted in that, and one of the ways we're being thwarted in that is by the countries that we are buying goods and energy from. So another major trading partner with California is India, and again, you can see they have about 4.1% of the carbon emissions in the world. They have a smaller percentage of the world's GDP, and sure enough, they have a carbon intensity of roughly twice what the United States does. Look to Mexico, a major trading partner in oil and other both cultural and business and economic sense. Once again, they have a sizable carbon emissions of 1.7%. They have about 1.4% of the GDP globally, and they are almost twice the carbon intensity of the United States. Finally, you look to Canada, and we hear a lot about the Canadian oil sands Canada has a great reputation worldwide for being environmentally sensitive, much more sensitive than the likes of us could ever imagine. And so let's look at where they are in terms of their global share. They have a 1.95% global share of carbon, which you look at and go, oh my gosh, that's roughly 1/10 what the United States does. They must be very, very sensitive up there. But their global share of the economy is microscopic compared to the United States. In fact, it is less than 1/2 of what we do here in California. But then you look to the right, and it is 90. They have a carbon intensity number of 90% of the United States. So if you extrapolated that out, the United States would have on a per capita it would have a carbon intensity, if it were equal to Canada, of more than Russia. So Canada, again, is one of all of these countries are much, much, much dirtier than anything produced in the United States. And so again, this is something to consider and analyze as you and I and everyone else are voting with our wallets and going to the pump every few days. So very happy to discuss any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. We do have 2 questions that came in. And the first one is, does the state have full authority over where its oil supply comes from?
No, it does not, other than if it produces, as Governor Newsom did, an executive order in which you cannot import oil produced from any sort of advanced production techniques domestically. So, which fall under the pejorative sounding term of fracking. And what fracking is basically is a horrible sounding term. I completely and totally acknowledge that. No one asked me, but what it does is essentially goes to proven wells. In California, for instance, there's tens of thousands of wells that start basically in what's known as the Monterey Formation. It starts in Monterey. It goes out to Bakersfield. It goes down to Newport Beach, and then it follows the California coast all the way up. It has an amount of oil roughly equal to Saudi Arabia. All of the oil infrastructure is in place and using new technology that essentially, instead of drilling, uses things like heat. It can use things like carbon dioxide gas. It can use things like sand or water. In California, it was going to use carbon dioxide gas, obviously, to inject that carbon dioxide back into the oil wells, which is why Jerry Brown and a large majority of both parties supported that in California. If you remember, we were in the room when Jerry Brown announced that in 2017. But one of the first things that Governor Newsom did was essentially make it nearly impossible to use any domestic oil. So therefore, we had to cancel all of our long-term contracts and go to the international market. When you're going to the international market on a spot or a small short-term basis, then you're going to be dealing with countries like Russia and oil producers of the last resort. And so that's why so it was known at the time that this was going to be one of the outcomes. The governor was warned about that. It was well reported at the time. He decided to go ahead with it anyway, and this is where we have. So is he physically is the governor or anyone in the state government writing the check? No. They were told what the economic consequences were of the policy. They've been shown that on a day-over-day basis for 3 years, and we still are doing that today. And so that's why we report outcomes, not what the intent was, because you guys and we all pay for outcomes, unfortunately.
Thank you,
question.
Jeff. And then we did have another question just come in through the chat. Would a reasonable person expect that producing more domestic oil would increase our carbon intensity number? Additionally, do you have any data on the massive amount of energy it takes to ship oil to the United States?
Well, yes, it essentially doubles the carbon intensity. Shipping it to the United States, shipping anything doubles its carbon intensity. That I can tell you off the top of my head. Two, those numbers are independent of whether or not we pump more oil in the United States. So the carbon intensity number in the United States will not increase that much because of the fact that in North Dakota, in Ohio, and who on this line would have thought that one of the leading employers in Ohio in the year 2022 would be the oil and gas industry, or Western Pennsylvania, or West Virginia? The idea that these places would have oil discoveries over 100 years after they were considered to be played out is amazing. And so all of the oil that is being produced in those states is being produced using technology that's 4 or 5 years old, and essentially is doing and you're not getting one pump for one pump. If you're thinking of old-timey oil derricks running out like you see in Carbon Canyon, if you ever go on a hike over in the Chino Hills along Brea as well, and you see a couple of the oil derricks, it's not that technology. You actually don't even see the pump, and the pump in one pump can deal with several dozens of wells, and so it's entirely a different thing. So the carbon intensity, it's a good question, but the carbon intensity of the United States is actually continuing to drop because of the widespread use, except in California, of natural gas. California, again, has chosen coal as its energy of choice, while other states are pursuing natural gas and then actually even nuclear, and to drive down their carbon intensity. So that chart 2 years from now would have even less carbon intensity for the United States, while China on a daily basis is permitting more and more coal facilities. So their carbon intensity would actually be increasing. Anything? But great question. Any other questions?
No, that is all, Jeff. Thank you so much for that. And then I do want to address one question that came into the chat myself. And that is in regards to how do we get this information out into the public view? After this call is over, I do upload them to our YouTube channel. So I try to do that as quickly as possible. So I want everyone on this call to make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, and then share this information with everybody that that you know of that could benefit from this. We go over some very important topics here, and we would love to have you guys share that. So with that, back to you, Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. Jeff, thank you so much. This is a tremendous amount of information. I think I'm going to have to go back and watch the YouTube video to just get it all. There's so much there. All right. Thank you, Jeff. If there are any other questions, feel free to submit them into the chat. I do want to see if Brad West has any announcements or anything he wants to point out from Assembly Member Sabrina Cervantes' office. And then I don't know if Linda or Sam want to give us a quick update on COVID numbers in the Corona Regional Medical Center. So Brad?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I just want to quickly highlight a resource that was recently released from the California State Library. I'm not sure if anybody had seen it, but it's a newly created California grants portal, which is essentially trying to be a centralized destination to find all grants and loans offered by state grant makers. Right now, there's about 153 current grant opportunities totaling about $21 billion of funding up for grabs. This is for nonprofits, businesses, and even individuals. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat. I recommend that you take a look at it and see if there's a grant you might want to apply for. If you have any questions or anything like that, I would be more than happy to answer them. So feel free to reach out. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate you jumping on the call. Linda, Sam, anything from your end you want to?
I'll jump quickly on the update on the COVID. We're still averaging in the mid-20s of COVID patients. The mix is 50-50 between vaccinated and unvaccinated. And we have a couple of patients in ICU, but no one on vets today.
And I just want to do a shout out to Sam and his team. We've had a lot of local folks that have had to utilize their services over at Corona Regional. And every time they step up and take care of them. And it's just awesome to have a local hospital, but yet a regional and one that has lots of resources available. And we just appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate it.
And I would just throw in, Sam, I would be safe to assume that Corona Regional Medical Center is doing some hiring, correct?
Always. We're always hiring
Always.
staff at all levels.
Any special areas?
Honestly, we need almost everybody from nursing to imaging techs to support staff, custodial staff, even physicians. Anybody who's looking for a job in healthcare, have them look us up. We'll probably have an opening for them.
That's great. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great information. Okay, let me see. There's something in the chat. Let me just check it real quick. Oh, okay, good. So we're going to wrap things up. I do want to thank a few folks for jumping on the call. Former mayor, former council member, Jason Scott. Thank you, Jason, is on the call. And from the Riverside County Office of Education, Annette DeMont is on the call. And with that, I want to thank Awards and Specialties for sponsoring our meeting today. You can learn more at awardsandspecialties.net. Please join us next week, August 3rd, for another business briefing. I hope everybody has a safe week, safe weekend, and are enjoying their summer. We'll see you on the 3rd. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.